Hey, you're listening to the Yarn from the Heart podcast. I'm your host, Mel, and I just want to acknowledge that I'm recording and filming this on Ngunnawal country. Always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today I'm going to be sharing my testimony. I feel like my testimony is probably more than what's occurred over the last year and a half, but I am going to focus on what's unfolded in the last year and a half for now, and hopefully another time I'll get into a little bit of the other things that have occurred in my life. So my story really started when I left Queensland. I actually grew up in Western Sydney, but I was living in Queensland for a few months in 2024, and I left at the end of 2024. And then I ended up getting a job in Northern Territory and living remotely in MEL-YFTH Island. So I was living there for a few months and everything was going great. Very remote, but that was okay. And then start of January, my nan passed away, and I travelled back to Sydney for her funeral. And while I was in Sydney, I caught up with a fella that I used to see, and he actually sexually assaulted me. So that happened, and then after the funeral, I just had to return to MEL-YFTH and try to move on with my life. I focused a lot on healing, and I was struggling a lot with PTSD at the time, and my mental health was declining. And just in the midst of my healing, I just started to talk to God. Like when I was getting ready for the day, or when I was, getting ready for bed and stuff at nighttime, I would just talk to God, kind of like I was having conversations with him. I'd just tell him about my day and just, ask him to bless the following day. And I would ask him to send the right people to me, to have the right conversations, things like that. And there was this one day I was at the airport and I was with this elder there, and she actually had the same name as my late auntie, and I think that's why her testimony really stuck with me. But she shared her testimony with me, and I just kind of noticed after she shared her testimony, I just kept getting other people coming up to me and sharing their testimonies with me. And I just kind of like clicked onto that from the start. And now I look back on it, these people were sharing their testimonies with me, and I wasn't even realizing that I was actually in the middle of my own testimony unfolding. So my mental health kept declining, and I ended up leaving the island, and I went back to Sydney, and I just decided I was going to pick up my car and I was just going to road trip around and just go wherever the wind takes me, pretty much. So I ended up going down through ACT, and I remember there was this one moment when I was driving and I was heading towards Snowy Mountains, and I believe it was around the why can't I think of what it's called? It's like the Divided Range or something. Divided, I feel like you probably know what I'm talking. It's like, it's the way to the Snowy Mountains. I'm actually a Ngunnawal woman myself, and I remember I had this moment. I was driving and I was just looking around, and everything just seemed like so peaceful, and I guess I just felt really connected to the land. Like I just was feeling really peaceful and connected to country. And I remember that moment, and that moment stuck with me. Anyways, kept going. I ended up in Melbourne, got to Melbourne, and I was just feeling defeated with everything, and I was just like, nah, like I'm heading back to Sydney. Halfway back to Sydney, Spirit was just telling me to like contact my friend, and I contacted them, and they invited me to go meet them around Jindabyne area. So I went there and did that, and I had this moment where I was like standing by this water and I was looking up at the moon, and it must have been like a full moon. I'm pretty sure I have the photo somewhere. And I was looking up at the full moon, and God was just telling me, like, your travels are not over yet. Like, don't go back to Sydney. Just keep going. Like, keep road tripping around, keep traveling for a bit more. So I did that and then headed over to the south coast, and there was this one morning Spirit was telling me, there's a lighthouse you need to go to today, like look for the lighthouse. And I came across Green Cape Lighthouse, and I headed out there, and there was this fella and his kid leaving as I was arriving, but apart from that I was like the only person there, and I was like, wow, like I was meant to be here today. No one's here, it's just me. And I was walking up, and then I found like this little chair that was like on like the side of the cliff, and I was like, wow, perfect. I sat down on the chair, and I just had this moment where I was like looking across the sea, and everything just looked so beautiful, and just the way the light was like shining down for the clouds, everything, it was just stunning. And I remember sitting there, and I just started to feel like this, presence around me, kind of like this breeze, and the only way I could describe it. Oh my gosh, I have to like keep pausing as I'm doing this testimony, because I feel like I just keep getting all these notifications, or like my cat Kenji is doing something silly in the background. I need to pause for a second. Funny that too, like of course it would happen when I'm sharing my testimony. Where was I up to? So I was having this beautiful moment at this lighthouse, and I just started to feel this presence around me, and the only way that I could describe it was, it felt like a Holy Spirit. And at the time, I didn't even know what that really meant. That was just the wording that came to my head that I would describe it to feel like. And yeah, I just started to pray to Jesus, and like it wasn't that I was asking him for anything in the prayer. I was just thanking him. I was just expressing gratitude. Like I was just having such a good day, and I was seeing beautiful places, and I was just like, thank you, Jesus. Like I'm so grateful. And yeah, I don't know why I feel like I get a little bit emotional telling this story. Yeah, I was just really feeling really grateful. And then as I was leaving, I look up, and there's literally an eagle flying around me, and the eagle is actually my totem, my Ngunnawal totem. And I thought that was really special. And then I carried on with my travels, and I made my way up to Queensland. And then when I got like up to, I think I got up to like Rockhampton, and I started to run out of money. So I was looking at jobs on like Facebook and stuff, just like ways to make quick money. And I came across like one of these carnival jobs, and I did join this carnival. But the night before, like as I was traveling to meet up with these people, I just had the worst day ever. Like anything that could go wrong just went wrong. Like literally anything that could go wrong went wrong this one day. And I was sitting in my car at this campsite, and I was looking at the stars, and I was just having a breakdown, and I started to pray to God, and I started to pray to Jesus. Trying to not cry. I started to pray to God, and I started to pray to Jesus and my ancestors, and I just prayed to them, and I said, like, I've had enough. Like, I just want stability in my life again. I want a good job. I want Kenji back. I want my own home again. Like, please, I just want stability. And I did throw in that I want a good man, which I'm still waiting for. But we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, and I actually, like 2 weeks ago, I came across a voice memo that I had recorded while I was having this mental breakdown in the middle of like whoop whoop like by myself. And I'll play some of the clips towards the end. So that happened, and then I started at the carnival, and it was like the third day in. I woke up one morning and the eagle was flying above, and he was calling out to me all day long, and I just knew he was telling me like, your time's up with the traveling, like head back to Sydney. And I did. That's what I did. I think I worked that one last day, and then the next morning I got up early and I went back to Sydney. So obviously still don't have a job, anything, don't really have a plan. Got back to Sydney it must have been for about 2 months. I was pretty much couch surfing. Like I was basically homeless, didn't have a job, had no money, was about to lose my car. I was just depressed and I was feeling lost, like I didn't know what I was doing in my life. And yeah, I ended up applying for a job, ACT, and I ended up getting a better position than what I even applied for, which was a blessing. Within 2 weeks, I moved down here, and yeah, my life just started to change, really. So because I was at this new job, working in this new town, I didn't know anyone, didn't know much about the services, so I started to just reach out to local services, Aboriginal services, and just be like, hey, like, can I introduce myself? Like, my name is Mel, blah, 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 this is my role. And I remember I was on the phone to my friend, and it was Sunday night, and I said to her, I was like, I just feel like I'm going to church soon. And she's like, that's great. But I really did, because I'm a very intuitive person, and I get messages like that all the time, and Spirit was telling me, you going to church. I'm like, okay, that's fine with me. So that Tuesday, so that's 2 days later, on the Tuesday, I was driving into this place just to introduce myself. And I realized as I was driving in, it said church. And I was like, wow. So I had a look and looked it up, and this church was connected to this service down here, and they do a lot of great work with Aboriginal community. And I was like, wow, she literally gets the best of both worlds. Like culture and church, like that's right up my alley. So I took that as a great sign, and I started attending this church. And yeah, it's just been like a little bit of a roller coaster. At the start of me attending church, everything was just like, it felt really blissful, like rainbows and butterflies. And it was kind of when I really started to realize that, yeah, like I definitely want to grow closer to God, and I want to do this properly. And I started thinking about and talking about wanting to get baptized, and it was like all my old habits came back. I ended up getting back into this really toxic relationship, and that really took a toll on my mental health. And I was kind of like, oh God, like why are all these things happening? I was just getting distracted by the enemy, I guess. Like, I don't know, just all these bad things started coming up, and I was like too depressed to like go to church, and I was just getting off track. Like I was losing focus and stuff. And yeah, then I started to get blessings come into my life. I got approved to get my own place. I was doing great at work, like getting lots of good feedback. I got Kenji, my cat, back home with me. That's something I prayed for. All these things were happening, and it was like I was being pulled into, God was pulling me into my new life. And that relationship was like the last little thing I really had to let go of. And that relationship ended after, yeah, it really, anyways, we can talk about that another time. But that relationship ended, and then I started focusing back on reading the Bible, going to church again. But actually, something I never stopped doing when I was going through that hard time, I never stopped praying. Like, just prayer has really changed my life from the start. And even if it's just been a quick one just before I'm going to sleep, or just even when I'm in the car, like I do always try to pray every single day. So yeah, and then I was like, I want to get baptized. Like, yes, I know I want to do it. And I was actually born on Good Friday, and my birthday and my 30th birthday this year fell on Easter Sunday, and I was like, that's the day I'm doing it. Like, hello, born on Good Friday, reborn on Easter Sunday. Like, that is meant to be. So yeah, I ended up getting baptized, and even just the last month, like, so much has changed in my life, and every day I feel like I'm growing closer to God. Every day I feel like I'm changing as a person. Yes, I still have little things come up, but I just feel like Jesus has really healed me. Like, let's not get emotional, we're almost finished. Jesus has just really healed me. And I think if that's one thing I can tell people, is literally that Jesus heals. I almost forgot to put in the voice recordings from the memo. So I'll just play a few that I like cut out, just so you understand where my head was at, like at this moment where I mentioned just before I started working at the carnival.
And I'm probably also just very emotional tonight because I had a conversation with my counsellor today, and we just had to go over the details of what happened with the sexual assault that happened in January. And that's probably why I'm really upset too. And I'm looking at the stars, and I keep seeing all these little stars floating around, like, not even shooting stars, like these stars are moving strangely, like moving slow and like across the sky, or like
They literally
moving
were.
up and changing directions. I don't know, I think I'm having experience with stars right now. But yeah, I strongly believe that everything happens for a reason. And that maybe that had to happen to me because I'm just not going to keep my mouth shut about it. And I would be more than happy to go to court and tell the truth about what happened to me, so it doesn't happen to someone else. And the time is now 7:52 p.m. 30th of April. Actually, that's probably really good that I got this out the last day of the month, the 30th of April. 30th of April. That's also probably why I'm crying, because it's Dad's anniversary and I only just realised. So that makes a lot of sense now.
So, I don't know if I mentioned that, but that night where I did have like that really big prayer where I was like in the middle of nowhere and I was sitting in the car and I had a breakdown, and after I like did that voice memo and I was journaling like what was going on, towards the end there you can hear that I realized it was actually the anniversary of the day that my dad passed away. Um, and even just that was like really significant. That I said all those prayers, like I asked for a new home, I asked for a good job, like for Kenji to come home, and I asked for this stability. And it was probably around like after the breakup when I was reading the Bible one day and I got to this point, and I was reading it and I was sitting in my room and it says, "Look now toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." Genesis 15:5. I read that part, and when I read that part about the stars, it took me back to this moment when I said that prayer and I had that breakdown, and try to not cry. And I had that breakdown and I read that verse and it was just like, wow, like I realized in that moment that God has answered my prayers. Like Kenji was sitting next to me, I'm reading this in my home, like I have a good job, and it was just like everything kind of came like full circle for me. And yeah, like that is just a big part of my testimony, and I just needed to add that in there. Sharing my testimony, like it can help someone else, or if someone else is thinking about, you know, going to church or connecting with God, like definitely do it. Like I feel like you probably won't meet anyone that is gonna be like, oh yeah, like I decided to give my life over to Christ and like worst mistake. Like no one would ever say that, honestly. Becoming Christian has changed my life and it continues to change my life. And yeah, that's my testimony. I've got a lot of other little pieces that I haven't mentioned, and hopefully I'll share them in the upcoming episodes. But if you have any questions or want to reach out to me, leave a comment below, like, share, and follow. And yeah, I guess I'll yarn with you next time. Thanks for listening.